Lesson 2. Solving quadratic equation. MELC M9AL-IA-B-1. Solve quadratic equation by A. Extracting square root, B. Factoring, C. Completing the square, and D. Using the quadratic formula. Solve quadratic equation. We have 4 methods. First one is extracting square root. Second is factoring. Third is completing the square. And the fourth method is using the quadratic formula. So before we proceed in factoring, let's have this activity. Find my roots. So, what's the square root of 4? Okay. 2. Square root of 9. 3. Square root of 16. 4. Square root of 25. 5. Square root of 100. 10. Square root of x squared, that is x. Now, if you're going to observe the given, lahat ng given natin dito, which is the 4, 9, 16, 25, 100, and x squared, lahat sila perfect square. Okay? So, what if ang given natin is not a perfect square? Let's say you have square root of 20. So, you need to get the factors of 20 na merong perfect square. So, that is 4 and 5. So, you need to get the square root of 4 and 5. Square root of 4, that is 2. And 5 is not a perfect square. So, dun lang siya sa loob ni square root sign. So, you have 2 square root of 5 as your answer for this. Okay? Next. You have square root of 27. So, you have square root of 9 times the square root of 3. So, you have 3 square root of 3. And lastly, you have square root of x cubed. So, that is square root of x squared times the square root of x. So, it will become x square root of x. Extracting square root. Remember when it was mentioned that a quadratic equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0 may have b is equal to 0, such that ax squared plus c is equal to 0. In other words, since c could be any constant, then ax squared is equal to c. And if a is equal to 1, the quadratic equation further reduced to x squared is equal to c. So, if you're going to remember our first topic, it was illustrated that the ax squared, this one, ax squared plus bx plus c, is the standard form of the quadratic equation. Now, possible na magkaroon tayo ng b. Magkaroon tayo ng b, which is the b is equal to 0. Okay? So, possible magkaroon tayo ng b which is equal to 0. Such that, ano mangyayari? Wala na yung linear term natin kasi si b is equal to 0. So, and also, if your a is equal to 1, so magiging 1 si a natin, the given is a is equal to 1, our quadratic equation will be reduced into x squared is equal to c. Okay, let's have example. Okay, example. The given is a is equal to 1, b is equal to 0, and c is equal to negative 9. So, you have ax squared plus bx plus c. So, using the standard form, you just simply substitute each value of A, B, and C. So, papalitan nyo lang lahat ng value ng A, B, and C. So, if you're going to observe, your A is equal to 1 na siya. Okay? And then your B is equal to 0. And your C is equal to negative 9. So, if you're going to simplify, what will happen? So, you have x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. So, nawala na ngayon tong linear term na to. Okay? Next. In order to solve a quadratic equation by extracting square root, the equation must be written in the form of x squared is equal to c. Before extracting the square root of the left and right side of the said equation so as to have the equation balanced. So, if you're going to observe, dapat, pag mag-extract ka ng root, lagi siyang nasa form ni x squared is equal to c. Okay? So, let's have the example. Example number 1, the given is x squared is equal to 9. So, the quadratic equation is in the form of x squared is equal to c. So, wala kang kailangang baguhin. So, you need to extract both sides, or the left and right side, extract the root. So, extract nyo, and then left and right. So, you have x is equal to positive and negative 3. So, bakit siya naging positive and negative 3? So, if you're going to observe here, we have x squared and then x. So, kapag ito, makakancel silang dalawa. Si square root at saka si x squared. And then you have the square root of 9. The square root of 9, it will become the positive and negative 3. Now, those are possible values that will satisfy the equation. Kaya yung solution dito, dalawa. Which is, or dalawa yung value of x dito. So, you have the value of x, which is the positive 3 and negative 3. So, if you're going to check, you just simply substitute each value. Galing kay x squared is equal to 9 from the original equation, which is this, papalitan lang natin. So, you have 3 squared is equal to 9. What is 3 squared? That is 9 is equal to 9. So, pareha sila. Okay? And then, another one, which is the x squared is equal to 9. Substitute nyo lang si negative 3. Negative 3, kasama si negative, and then squared, and then you have 9. Negative times negative, it will become positive. So, 3 times 3, again, 9 is equal to 9. So, those values, positive and negative, satisfy the given equation. Okay? Okay. So, sample number 2. The given is x squared minus 25 is equal to 0. So, the given is not written in the form of x squared is equal to c. So, to make it that, you need to apply the addition property of equality. So, kailangan natin gamitin si APE. Then, you're going to add both sides by 25, 25. Okay? Para, si negative 25 plus 25, it will become 0. So, ang naiwan na lang dito is the x squared is equal to 25. So, ngayon, nakasulat na siya into the form of x squared is equal to c. So, ngayon, extract mo na siya, both sides. What is the square root of x squared? So, square root and then x squared, makakancel na to. Okay, mawawala na to. So, may iwan na lang si x. And then, the square root of 25 is the positive and negative 5. Those are the possible values that will satisfy the quadratic equation. So, same lang din, if you're going to check the solution, you may use the x squared minus 25, the original equation, is equal to 0. Substitute nyo muna si positive 5. So, si 5 squared minus 25 is equal to 0. 5 squared, that is 25, minus 25 is equal to 0. And 25 minus 25, that is equal to 0. So, therefore, that is 0 is equal to 0. Okay? And another one is, again, you have x squared minus 25 is equal to 0. So, you have negative 5, squared mo lang din, kasama si negative, minus 25 is equal to 0. Negative times negative, it will become positive, and then you have 5 times 5, that is 25. So, 25 minus 25 is equal to 0. 25 minus 25, that is 0, is equal to 0. So, it is satisfy the given equation. Example number 3. Given is 4x squared is equal to 49. So, the given is not written in the form of x squared is equal to c. So, therefore, gagamit tayo ng multiplication property of equality. Multiply both sides by 1/4. So, after you multiply both sides by 1/4, 1 times 4x squared, it will become 4x squared. And then over 4, and then you have 49 times 1/4, it will become 49 over 4. So, if you're going to simplify this given, you have 4 over 4, it will become 1, so mawawala na to. Okay? So, it will become x squared is equal to 49 over 4. Now, if you're going to observe, it was written na in the form of x squared is equal to c. Now, extract the square root of the left and right side. So, square both sides. What is the square root of x squared? That is x. And the square root of 49, that is 7. And the square root of 4 is 2. Again, that is the positive and negative 7 over 2. That is the possible value that will satisfy the equation. Now, if you're going to check that, again, you're going to use the original equation. So, this equation, or the original given, i-substitute nyo lang yung nakuha nyong value ni x. So, kapag naging equal sila, therefore, that is the solution. Okay, so for your activity, solve for the variable of the following quadratic equation by extracting square root. Number 1, x squared is equal to 169. Again, ang target nyo lagi, dapat nakasulat siya in the form of x squared is equal to c. Since si number 1, nakaganyan na siya, so ang gagawin nyo lang, kulong nyo lang siya kay square root sign. Okay? Next, yung number 2, you need to multiply both sides by 1 over 9. Kasi ang katabi ni b dito is 9. Okay? Now, for number 3, get nyo lang yung square root both sides. Okay? Kulong nyo lang siya kay square root sign. And then for number 4, ganun lang din, extract nyo lang both sides. And number 5, you have, okay, so this given for number 5, si 72, lipat nyo sa kabila muna using addition property of equality. So yung number 5, bigyan kayo ng hint, paano siya sagutan. So you have 2 times the quantity of t minus 3 square is equal to 72. So, yung negative dito, lilipat siya on the other side, so magiging positive 72 na siya. Okay? Using the addition property of equality. So, hindi pa siya naka-form ng ganito, so you need to divide both sides by 2. So, mawawala na to. Ang may iwan na lang is the t minus 3 quantity squared is equal to 72 divided by 2, that is 36. So, naka-form na siya ng ganito. Okay? Okay, before we proceed in the factoring method, let's have this activity. Yeah, factor me. Okay? So, factor. Pag sinabing factor, ano yung dalawang number na kapag minultiply mo, lalabas as product ito. Okay, halimbawa si 6. So, the factors are 2 times 3 and then 1 and 6. Next, 8. The factors are 2 and 4, 1 and 8. Next, 12. You have 3 and 4, 1 and 8, 2 and 6. And lastly, you have 16, 2 times 8, 1 times 16, and 4 times 4. Okay? Solving quadratic equation by factoring. Only quadratic equation that is factorable can be solved by factoring. To solve such quadratic equation, the following procedure can be followed. Number 1, transform the quadratic expression into standard form if necessary. Number 2, factor the quadratic expression. Number 3, apply zero product property by setting each factor of the quadratic expression equal to 0. Solve the resulting equation. And number 5, check the values of the variable obtained by substituting each in the original equation. Now, kaya tayo nag-recall kanina ng factors kasi this method, which is the factoring, kailangan yung given na quadratic equation is in factorable. Okay? So, let's have the example. Okay. So, before we proceed in the example, so let's have the zero product property. If a real number are a and b, then a times b is equal to 0, such that a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. Or a and b are both equal to 0. So, pinaghiwalay lang. Since si a and b, parehas naman silang naka-equate kay 0, ngayon, pinaghiwalay lang si a at saka si b. Kuha po. So, for our example, solve the given equation by factoring. You have n squared plus 2n plus 1 is equal to 0. A quadratic equation is written in standard form. So, tatandaan nyo lang dapat naka-form siya ng ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Okay? Now, saan kayo magbe-base ng pagpa-factor? Sa first term at saka sa last term. Okay? So, the factors of n squared is n times n. So, ito yun. So, you have n and then n. And then, the factors of 1 is 1 times 1. So, you have 1 and then 1. Now, yung pagpa-factors nyo, doon naka-base yung middle term. Okay? How to get the middle term? Middle term, you have to multiply the outside and inside. Okay? Outside, n times 1. So, you have n times 1 is equal to n. And then, you have 1 times n. 1 times n is also equal to n. And then, you're going to add. What is n plus n? So, that is 2n. Yun yung middle term. So, using the zero product property, paghihiwalayin natin sila, since they are the same, lang naman, so possible kasi na magkaiba sila. So, you have n plus 1 is equal to 0, and then the another one is n plus 1 is equal to 0. Now, using the addition property of equality, so you have n plus 1 minus 1 is equal to negative 1. N plus 1 minus 1 is equal to negative 1. So, what will happen? Mawawala na to. Ang may iwan na lang is n is equal to negative 1. Okay, for the second example, you have m squared plus 3m plus 2 is equal to 0. Again, the given, nakasulat na siya in standard form. Okay? Again, magbe-base kayo ng pagpa-factor nyo kay first and last term. Okay? Now, factor of m squared, that is m times m. So, ito yon. And then, the factors of 2 is 1 and then 2. Now, you need to multiply the outside and inside, which is 1 times m is equal to m. Ito yon. And the outside, etong dalawa, you have m times 2 is equal to 2m. Then, add nyo siya. So, it will become 3m. So, yung lumabas dito, which is 3m, siya yung middle term. Okay? It means that, tama yung pag-factors nyo doon kay first and last term. Okay? Next, equate it by 0 or using the zero product property, pinaghiwalay lang natin siya. Now, so using the addition property of equality, naging negative 1 and negative 2. Again, m is plus 1 minus 1 is equal to negative 1. You have m plus 2 minus 2 is equal to negative 2. Kaya mawawala na to. Okay? Now, sa iba, para mas madali, since ang given mo, ito, si m plus 1 is equal to 0, since lilipat siya on the other side, magpapalit siya ng sign. So, magiging m is equal to negative 1. So, parehas lang din dito. Okay? Ganon lang din dito, since the given is m plus 2 is equal to 0, magiging m is equal to negative 2. Lilipat na naman siya ng side. Okay, example number 3. You have 2c squared plus c is equal to 10. So, the given is not written in standard form. So, gagamit tayo ng APE, addition property of equality, to make it standard form. So, you have 2c plus c is equal to 10. So, you have 2c squared plus c minus 10 is equal to 10 minus 10. So, yung right side niya, magiging 0 na. So, it was written in standard form. Now, again, focus on the first and the last term. So, what are the factors of 2c squared? That is 2c times c. And then, what are the factors of negative 10? Gagamitin si 5 times negative 2. So, those are the factors. Again, check nyo lang lagi si middle term. You have 5 and then c. Multiply nyo lang yan. 5 times c, that is 5c. And you have 2c times negative 2. You have 2c times negative 2. It will become negative 4c. So, if you're going to add this, magiging c na lang siya. Ayun yung nasa middle term natin. Okay? Again, using the zero product property, it will become 2c plus 5 is equal to 0 times c minus 2 is equal to 0. Okay? Again, using the APE, addition property of equality, napunta na siya on the other side. Again, magiging 2c plus 5 minus 5 is equal to negative 5. You have c minus 2 plus 2 is equal to 2. So, mawawala na tong part na to. Magiging 0 na yan. Magiging 0 na to. So, ang naiwan na lang is 2c. And then, you have negative 5. Dito naman, naiwan na lang si c. And then, you have 2. So, you have here the value of c, which is 2. In this side, hindi pa siya final since meron ka pa ditong 2 sa tabing c. So, you need to divide both sides. You need to divide both sides by 2 or using the multiplication property of equality. So, magiging c is equal to negative 5 over. So, for your activity, I will give you a hint how to answer this. So, for number 1, you have x squared plus 7x is equal to 0. It was written in standard form. Yun nga lang, wala kayong value ng c dito. So, factor nyo lang si x squared. Anong common sa kanila? The common is x. So, labas nyo lang si x. Times the quantity of x plus 7 is equal to 0. Saan ang galing to? Again, x times x, that is x squared. You have x times 7, that is 7x. Kuha. Then, separate nyo lang sila using the zero product property. Magiging x is equal to 0. And then, it will become x plus 7 is equal to 0. Again, using the addition property of equality, continue nyo to. Okay? Next, for number 2, m squared plus 8m is equal to negative 16. It was not written in standard form. Using the addition property of equality, both sides mag-add kayo ng 16. Add 16 dito, then add 16 kayo dito. Okay? So, since nag-add kayo both sides by 16, magiging m squared plus 8m plus 16 is equal to 0. So, if you're going to observe, it was written in standard form. Now, ano yung factor ni 16? Factors ni 16. Nagagamitin natin is 4 and then 4. Factors of m squared, that is m and then m. Now, parehas silang positive. And then, to check if your factor is correct, multiply nyo lang si 4 at saka si m. 4 times m, that is 4m. M times 4, that is also 4m. So, kapag in-add natin to, that is 8m, that is our middle term. Okay? Then, equate nyo lang siya by 0. Zero product property, paghiwalay nyo ulit. Okay? Next, number 3. For number 3, x squared plus 5x minus 14. It was written in standard form. So, isipan nyo lang ng factors si 14. Factors of x squared, you have x and then x. Factors of 14 na gagamitin natin is 7, and 2. Para mapalabas natin si 5x. So, you have to be careful sa sign na gagamitin nyo. Kailangan kasi mapapalabas nyo si middle term na 5x. So, you have here positive 7 and then you have negative 2. If you're going to multiply this, 7 times x, so you have 7x. You have x times negative 2, you have negative 2x. So, kapag in-add mo to, magiging 5x and that is your middle term. Again, equate nyo lang by 0 using the zero product property and then paghiwalayin nyo using the APE. Next, number 4. The number 4, if you're going to observe, 2, 8, and 10 are divisible by 2. So, you can multiply them by 1/2 para ma-reduce natin at mas madali siyang i-factor. So, magiging y squared plus 4y minus 5 is equal to 0. So, in standard form na siya. Mas madali. So, ang gagawin nyo lang is to factor out ano yung factors ni y squared, that is y and y. Factors ni negative 5 na gagamitin natin, you have 5 and then 1. 5 is positive and 1 is the negative. So, factor nyo lang is equal to 0. Then, using the zero product property, you're going to continue the given. Solving quadratic equation by completing the square. If the first two methods in solving quadratic equation cannot be used to solve such quadratic equation, then you must need another method to solve the said equation. This other way of solving quadratic equation is actually referred to as the mother of all methods in solving any quadratic equation. The completing the square method also includes the use of extracting square root after completing the square part. Now, in this method, si completing the square, if the given is not applicable kay extracting, and also hindi siya applicable kay factoring, that is the time na gagamitin nyo na si completing the square. And si completing the square is the combination of extracting and factoring. So, ibig sabihin, pag nag-solve ka ng completing the square, papasok dito yung extracting and factoring. So, we have the steps in solving quadratic equation using the completing the square. Okay, first one, divide both sides of the quadratic equation by a, then simplify. Kapag yung a is more than 1, kailangan natin i-divide both sides. Okay? Next, number 2. Write the equation such that the term with variable are on the left side of the equation and the constant term is on the right side. So, kailangan nating paghiwalayan. Lahat ng may variable, nasa left side. Lahat ng constant term, yung mga walang variable, lahat nasa right side. Number 3, add the square of 1/2 of the coefficient of x on the both sides of the resulting equation. The left side of the equation become perfect square trinomial. So, ang target lang dito in number 3, kailangan maka-form ka ng perfect square trinomial. So, mamaya sa example natin makikita nyo. Next, number 4, express the perfect square trinomial on the left side of the equation as the square of the binomial. So, since na nakakuha na tayo ng perfect square trinomial, kailangan magawa natin siya as the perfect square binomial. And number 5, solve the resulting quadratic equation by extracting the square root. So, kung mapapansin nyo, papasok dito yung topic kanina na extracting the root. And number 6, solve the resulting linear equation to get the value of x or to get the solution. Okay, in solving the completing the square, we need to recall how to get the square of trinomial na maging square of binomial. Or yung square of binomial magiging perfect square trinomial. So, in this given, you have x squared plus blank plus 9. So, given that you have incomplete perfect square trinomial, so recall lang natin that this x squared, siya yung tinatawag natin as our quadratic term. Okay? Now, yung nawawala dito, siya ngayon si linear term. And you have 9 here, siya ngayon si our constant term. Now, saan ang galing si 6x? So, how do you arrive 6x? The middle term or the linear term is found by doubling the product of the square roots of first and last term. So, kailangan kunin mo yung square root ni x squared. At kailangan mo rin makuha yung square root ni 9. And then, doblehin mo siya or i-times 2 mo siya. So, the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 9 is 3. And then multiply it by 2. 3 times x times 2, the answer is 6x. And that 6x, siya ngayon yung our middle term. Okay? Next. Since you have x squared plus 6x plus 9 is a perfect square trinomial, pwede mo na siyang i-express by x plus 3 times the quantity of x plus 3. Or, written in the form of x plus 3 quantity squared. Ito yung tinatawag na square of binomial. Okay, another example. The given is 4e squared minus blank plus 25. Again, it is incomplete perfect square trinomial. Now, you have 20e. Saan ang galing sa 20e? Same procedure na ginawa lang kanina. So, you need to get the square root of 4e squared. And then you are going to get the square root of 25. Again, the first and then last term. And then multiply it by 2. So, the square root of 4e squared is 2e. And the square root of 25 is 5. And then times 2. 2e times 5 is 10e times 2, that is 20e. Okay? So, yung 20e na nakuha, siya po yung ating middle term or yung tinatawag na linear term. So, since we have the perfect square trinomial, PST na to ang tawag dito, pwede na natin siyang i-factor. I-factor into 2e minus 5, 2e minus 5. Okay? Or, pwede mo siyang isulat as 2e minus 5 quantity squared. Okay? Note, the sign of the middle missing term is also be the sign of the operation between the two terms in the square of binomial. Okay? So, kung ano yung sign ni middle term dito, middle term, yun yung sign dito sa square of binomial. Sample number 3. What do you do when the quadratic trinomial to be completed does not seem to be incomplete? It consists of 3 terms, but it is not a perfect square trinomial. So, yung tatlo yung term niya, pero hindi naman siya kino-consider as perfect square trinomial. Bakit hindi siya ma-consider as perfect square trinomial? Because if you're going to factor out si 4, ang factor ni 4 is 1 and 4, and then 2 times 2. Pag inad natin si 1 and 4, that is 5. And then 2 and 2, that is 4. Hindi magsasatisfy kay middle term, which is 2x. So, hindi lalabas yung middle term natin or yung linear term natin. So, ang kailangan natin gawin is to add a number na magiging 0. So, ibig sabihin, hindi makaka-apekto dun sa equation. Mag-a-add tayo dito ng number sa dalawang side. Okay? So, mag-a-add tayo ng 1 and then negative 1. 1 dito and then negative 1. Saan ang galing si 1? 1 is coming from the middle term, which is 2. You need to get the half of 2. Kalahati ni 2 is 1. After you get the half of 2, kailangan mong kunin yung square root. And then the square root of 1 is 1. Now, combining like terms or combining the constant, you have 4 minus 1. Okay? 4 minus 1, that is 3. Hindi natin sinama si 1 kasi si 1 is part of the perfect square trinomial. Etong part na to is a perfect square trinomial na siya. So, if you're going to simplify this one, you're going to write it as the square of binomial. So, since perfect square trinomial na siya, pwede mo na siyang i-express as perfect square binomial. So, magiging x plus 1 times the quantity of x plus 1. So, eto na siya pag sinulat mo siya. And then, plus 3. Solve for the value of x using the completing the square. Given x squared plus 2x is equal to 8. So, lahat ng term, lagay muna natin on the left side. Okay? Para ma-equate natin siya into 0. So, given, you have x squared plus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0 using the addition property of equality. Next, so it will become x squared plus 2x plus blank minus 8 minus blank is equal to 0. So, para hindi maapektuhan yung given equation natin, again, mag-add tayo, magma-minus tayo para mag-equal lang siya kay 0. Again, our target is makakuha tayo ng perfect square trinomial. Ano yung i-add natin na number dito? Magbe-base tayo dito kay middle term, which is 2. So, get the half of 2, so you have 2 over 2. 2 over 2, that is 1. Get the square root of 1, that is 1. So, plus 1, and then minus 1. Okay? Next, you're going to combine the constant term. So, it will become x squared plus 2x plus 1 minus 9 is equal to 0. Now, hindi kasama si 1 kasi si 1 is part of the perfect square trinomial. So, may nakuha na tayong perfect square trinomial. So, if you have the perfect square trinomial, gagawin natin siyang square of binomial. So, magiging x plus 1 times the x plus 1 minus 9 is equal to 0. Next, let's make this one as the square of binomial since silang dalawa parehas na. So, magiging x plus 1 quantity squared minus 9 is equal to 0. Now, in this case, ganito na yung given natin. Let's continue here. So, you have x plus 1, quantity squared, is equal to 9. Okay? Using the addition property of equality. Now, ang gagawin po natin dito, naka-form na siya ng x squared is equal to c. So, we can apply now the extracting the root. So, get the square root of both sides. So, makancel na to. So, may iwan si x plus 1 is equal to positive and negative 3. Okay? Now, let us separate this. Okay? Using the addition property of equality, C1, ililipat natin on the right side para makuha natin yung value ni x. So, you have x plus 1 is equal to 3. Separate lang natin yung positive and negative. So, magiging x plus 1 is equal to negative 3. So, it will become x is equal to 3. C1, using the addition property of equality, magma-minus tayo ng 1. So, minus 1 dito, minus 1 din dito. Okay? So, magiging 3 minus 1 ito. Itong part na to, magiging 0 na siya. Ito, magiging 0 na. So, you have x is equal to 3 minus 1, that is 2. Okay? On the other side, so you have x is equal to negative 3. So, you have 1 here plus 1. On the other side, using the addition property of equality, so, ganun lang din ulit, magma-minus tayo ng 1 minus 1. So, this part, mawawala na to. Magiging 0 na siya. So, ito, negative 3 minus 1. So, negative 3 minus 1. So, x is equal to negative 3 minus 1, that is negative 4. And these are the values of x, which is negative 4 and positive 2. So, ganyan yung pag-solve kapag ginamit si completing the square. Solving quadratic equation by using the quadratic formula. So, this is the fourth method. For any given quadratic equation in one variable, in the standard form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, all you need to do is to substitute the corresponding values of the numerical coefficient of a, b, and c from the standard form of the quadratic equation in the formula of x is equal to negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Solving quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. So, for the example, you have x squared plus 6x plus 5 is equal to 0. First thing that you're going to do is to determine the values of a, b, c. So, ca is equal to 1, b is equal to 6, c is equal to 5. So, using the formula, substitute nyo lang lahat ng value. Papalitan lang po. Then, simplify. So, unang isi-simplify natin dyan is c 6 squared. So, 6 squared will become 36, and then you have 4 times 1 times 5, it will become 20. So, 36 minus 20, that is 16, and that get the square root of 16, that is 4. Then, separate the positive and negative to solve the value of x. So, you have here negative 6 plus 4 over 2. Negative 2 over 2, and that is negative 1 as the value of x sub 1. Then the another one, you have negative 6 minus 4 over 2. And that is negative 10 over 2. So, for the x sub 2, the answer is negative 5. So, for the solution, x is equal to negative 5. And another one, x is equal to negative 1. Okay, let us solve using the quadratic formula. Given x squared minus 5x is equal to 14. So, okay, you need to arrange this one in standard form before you get the value of a, b, and c. So, using the APE, it will become x squared plus 5x minus 14 is equal to 0. So, determine the value of a, b, and c. A is equal to 1, b is equal to 5, and c is equal to negative 14. Using the quadratic formula, you're going to substitute each value. So you have b, which is 5, so you have negative 5, plus minus the square root of, you have b squared, so you have 5 squared minus 4, and then your a is 1, and then your c is negative 14, over 2 times 1 is equal to, simplify yung mga nasa loob ni quadratic ni square root sign. So you have negative 5 plus minus the square root of 25. 4 times 1 times 14, that is 56. Negative times negative, magiging positive, so magiging plus 56. 2 times 1, that is 2. So you have negative 5 plus minus the square root of 81 over 2. So for negative 5 plus minus square root of 81, that is 9 over 2. Separate this, so this is the value of x. So get the value of x sub 1 and then the value of x sub 2. X sub 1, negative 5 plus 9 over 2. So x sub 2, negative 5 minus 9 over 2. Okay? So you have negative 5 plus 9, that is positive 4 divided by 2. 4 divided by 2, that is 2. Okay? So this is the value of x sub 1. Next, for x sub 2, you have negative 5 minus 9, that is negative 14 over 2. Negative 14 divided by 2, that is negative 7. So that is the value of x sub 2. Okay? So those are the solution of the quadratic formula. If you want to check, you just simply substitute the value of x sub 1 and x sub 2 on the given quadratic formula, quadratic equation.